Okay, hi everyone. We'll give it a few minutes to let people trickle in here uh, for our live discussion of Nona the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, the third book in the Locked Tomb series. I am just going to pull up to make sure on my end that we're live.
It says we are live, so hopefully that's the
Yeah.
case.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, perfect.
I
So,
am so excited to be
yeah,
talking Nona the Ninth with you. So
me too.
excited.
That just like fell. So Taylor and I have not spoken about Nona, like basically at all, the whole time that she finished and she was like, "Oh my god, I can't wait for you to read this book." Like I think you said like I have thoughts or something, like I have opinions or
I
whatever,
do.
something very vague. And I think all I said to you during when I was reading it was at a certain point I was like, I really like Nona, like Nona's really cute, but like when is something going to happen? I think that was like
Hmm.
not quite 25% in yet because I remember you saying like it'll happen, don't worry.
Yeah, yeah. You
But
also
otherwise,
said that you really loved a certain moment when two characters meet, and I've been rereading, listening to the audiobook, and I haven't gotten to that point yet.
yeah, when I sent you like that quote of the dialogue,
I think so,
or was
yeah.
it
And
different?
just
Yeah.
that you were saying that the audiobook is just amazing at that
Oh,
point.
oh my gosh! Like just Moira Quirk
Yep.
just
She's
absolutely kills it.
she's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like all of her character voices. Okay, full disclosure, I wasn't a huge fan of Pyrrha Dvay's voice, but everything else,
Yes, that was
perfection.
just a shock to me. Yeah.
Hmm.
Like that particular French accent,
Yeah, because she did
something.
French for Jean Marie also. She did French for the Fourth House characters, like a French accent.
Did
Um,
she only in Harrow? In the
no, in Gideon as well.
No, they had like
Yes.
Scottish accents in the
No, no,
in
no. That's the
Gideon.
Fifth House. That's the Fifth House.
No, even the kids
No.
too. I swear, I listened to those audiobooks back to back recently, and I remember
I
getting to the
did
Harrow
too.
and them being French, and I was just like, "What?
No.
Are you sure?"
Maybe maybe it was like slightly more subtly French, but they were still French, especially Jean Marie.
I mean, it would make sense in genre, but like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe
Telling you.
I don't think. No, I would agree that Pyrrha's voice wasn't what I was expecting because I don't
Yeah.
feel like that's the voice that they put on at the end of Harrow.
It wasn't. It was, and I
Yeah,
wasn't a huge fan of that voice either. So at first I was like, "Oh, good, she changed the Pyrrha voice," but then I liked
mm,
it. I didn't. I still didn't like it.
yeah. Okay. Well, so that being said, like we have not shared thoughts about how what we thought of Nona up to this point. I think we had one mutual friend who told us both that they didn't love it.
Hmm.
Or was he like neutral about it? All he said to me was like something about like maybe he didn't enjoy it or he was
I think he
disappointed.
was. I think he was disappointed. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't that he hated it or anything, but like Harrow is a hard act to follow.
Yeah.
And every single time I reread Harrow, I'm struck even more by like how beautiful it is. Like it's so weird. And the first couple times I reread it, I read it, I was just like, this book is nuts. And I was trying to figure out what was going on. But this time in the lead up to Nona, it was my third time reading it. And I was just struck by what a sort of poignant expression of grief it was and trauma.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really, really hit me that time round.
Yeah.
And like it's beautiful, it's sad, it's I was heartbroken really listening to it.
Yeah. Oh, my headphones are doing that weird. Say something.
Is this working?
Ah, my headphones do this weird thing where they like suddenly do a robot voice every now and then, and it's really, really annoying. How many times have you read Gideon and or Harrow and or like and Nona?
So three times each for Gideon and Harrow, once each in like the book form. Oh, actually, maybe it might be four for Gideon now.
Right.
I might have read it and then reread it in time for Harrow,
And
and
then reread it
then
again for Nona.
yeah, no, I think it's three times each.
Okay.
Um, and so but two times both my rereads have been on audio actually because I think Moira Quirk does such an amazing job.
Yeah.
But my first time, I always try to do it in actual book form because I find it so much easier to like go back and check things or like, bookmark,
Yeah.
even if it's an ebook or something like that. And the dramatis personae in the first two books is so helpful.
Yeah.
It's not really that helpful in Nona.
No. Um, so I think that I've read Harrow twice.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. I think I read it ebook first and then audio. And I might have read Gideon 3 times. I can't
Okay.
remember if I reread Gideon before reading Harrow. So I read Gideon in like 2020,
Hmm.
and then I read Harrow last fall, and I might have reread Gideon, can't recall. And then I read both of them again this year,
Hmm.
or like this summer before reading Nona.
Okay.
How
So
far
here's
are
the
you on your Nona
sorry.
reread currently?
I'm about halfway. I don't want to say what part I'm
Okay,
at
so
because I don't want to say spoilers yet.
yeah,
But
good note. Okay, so we'll do non-spoilers for like the first little bit for people rewatching this, and then we will get into specific thoughts. Go. What did you think?
um so I want to preface this by saying that I think Harrow was an extremely difficult act to follow because well, I mean, I thought that when I read Harrow. I was like Gideon is such a hard act to follow, but Harrow just did things like so perfectly. There's so many layers. And I didn't feel the same way about Nona. Like, don't get me wrong, Nona was really cute, and I understand a lot of the narrative reasons for doing what Nora was doing, and I appreciate sort of getting a non-house kind of perspective because Nona in so many ways is um not particularly beholden to a certain point of view. Like she's very
Hmm.
influenced by her friends, for example, but also by Camilla and Palamedes and Pyrrha. So she's kind of torn, right? And we get this nice, more nuanced perspective of like bigger world or universe politics. But in terms of a story, I
Did we
just didn't.
though?
I mean,
But
yes,
yes, yes, yes.
because no, because we get to see what happens to people who aren't part of the nine houses.
Yes. Okay.
We
Yep.
get to see because before that, like we'd heard of Blood of Eden, but we'd only heard God's perspective basically, and then Harrow coming across Camilla and Corona Beth and Captain Deuteros at
Yeah.
one point. Like that's all that we get really. We just hear that they're
And
fanatics.
Commander Wake, at the
Yeah,
end.
okay, yeah, that's true. Yeah, huge
We get
thing.
that
And
branching sort of.
yeah, and Commander Wake does nothing to appease the idea that they're all fanatics. And like,
No.
okay, maybe they are, but we get a lot more nuanced of a look at it, I think. Anyway, I'm
I
being
cut you off
really
about
rambly.
story.
Yeah.
No, no, I cut you off, but you were about to say something about the story.
I wasn't really compelled by the story as much. So I was actually pretty bored for the first 25%. And then
Yeah.
things kicked in, stuff started happening, and I really enjoyed the middle half. And then certain choices that were made in the last quarter, I did not like in some ways. And I don't want
Oh,
to say too
okay.
much now, but it just
Yeah,
kind
we'll
of
get into it.
left me with a bad feeling. Like, not a bad feeling, like a little bit of a like disappointed feeling
Yeah,
at the end.
yeah, okay. Does it have to do with a certain prince?
Yes, that is a
Yeah,
big part of it, but it
yeah.
also has to do with two of my absolute favorite characters.
Okay. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So what did you think?
Actually, very similarly.
Okay.
Like, I and I think that this is atypical. I feel like I've only been seeing rave reviews of people who being,
Okay.
I think people are finding this a little bit more um, palatable or like a little bit easier to consume. And I get that.
Okay.
That's totally
Mhm.
fair, right? Like Hero is wild, and
Yeah.
Gideon was like such a odd mix that like people have trouble with like the complete lack of world building and magic system stuff that's going on there, right? Like
Okay.
people really struggle with that. That being
I think
said,
people are too focused on magic systems, but that's
yeah, yeah,
my
a
personal
hundred,
opinion.
100% agree. But again, they're like synergy, synergy, blah blah blah, and you're just like, what is happening in the first book? And in the
Okay.
second book, you're like, what's going on? But
Yeah.
I loved when I did the reread this summer, both of them. I was kind of bored during Gideon because I
Okay.
felt like it wasn't as relevant. Like I felt like
Mm.
only the ending of how things shook out was important. Whereas otherwise, I felt like
Oh.
I didn't really feel like the rest of the book gave me anything. It was just like all of that was more like, ooh, what's happening the first time I read
Right.
it? But this time I was like, I don't care. This actually isn't important.
I'd
Maybe it is.
actually
Maybe there's like so
forgotten.
many little world nuggets in there about like the rooms and Canaan House and whatever.
Yeah.
Or
But
Canaan,
yeah,
something.
Kanan. But like you don't need to know those things either to get the
Yeah.
story. But actually I know what you mean because on this reread I was struck by how kind of boring Gideon is in the first quarter. And
Yeah.
maybe more just
Fun.
doesn't
I like
does.
Gideon. I love
Oh
Gideon's
yeah,
like
she's fun, but
POV.
like she's just stuck in the ninth house for like
Yeah.
actually a really long time and it's not until they get to Canaan House that things start getting interesting. And
I
so
even
if
thought that portion was kind of like, we get
okay.
it, people are dying. Like it
Oh
wasn't as fun.
no.
Like I remember
Okay.
like my first read, I remember like being like, this is so much fun. Like, isn't this supposed to be
Mhm.
dark? And then like turning the page and the first murder happens, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas on my Harrow reread, I was like, this is genius. And like I thought that when I
Mhm.
was first reading it, but this is a series that is like I think it's going to be so rereadable because you're going to pick up so much every time that you do.
Yeah.
And Harrow, that when you're reading it for the second time, even though like I will say that I had already guessed why it was second person perspective. Even before I picked up
Yeah.
Harrow, I had
Yeah.
guessed that. And I think I had kind of like
Yeah.
tentatively confirmed it with you, like my theory,
Okay.
even before I'd picked it up. Um, but I think I loved Harrow so much more on my second read, and
Okay.
following like immediately picking up Nona after reading Harrow was a little bit like this is really cute. I'm enjoying my time here, but my overall sense was like, what did this get me?
Yeah.
That's kind of
Yeah.
how I felt about it. And I do have like
Did you feel that way about all of it or just like the first portion?
I felt that way about most of it. I
Okay.
think that it didn't need to be as long as it was. And actually, I wrote down as one of my like takeaways was like, did it need to be a whole book? Because I meant to reread that interview with Tanzamir that you sent me ages ago, where it was basically like this was supposed to be the prologue for Electo,
Mhm.
and at a
Or
certain point,
the
Tenzin.
first quarter. Yeah. The
Oh,
first
I thought it was supposed to
act.
be the
No, no,
the
no.
first
It's
act.
supposed to be the
Okay,
first act. Yeah.
the
So
first
the
act.
first quarter of the book.
And then at a certain point, she had written like a 10,000 word first act for a book, you know, like, and they're like, oh, this needs to be separate, and that's hence why it went from a trilogy to 4 book series.
She hadn't written a 10,000 word first act. She'd
Was it
written
more? I just
like
pulled
a
that number out of.
100,000 word,
Okay, I don't.
which is
Word,
a full
word
book.
count in book is not anything that
Yeah.
means
Okay.
anything to me. Yeah,
Like most books are going to be most fantasy books are going to be like within 80,000 and 120,000, and then you get into like the big epic ones that are more than that.
Okay. Okay, so that's how Nona came to me, was that this was supposed to
Yeah.
be the first act. And like I don't want to say that it could have been part of another book. Like we're not sure how much Electo is going to get us. Obviously, like a
Mhm.
significant amount considering how this ended, which I have
Mhm.
thoughts on. Um, but I don't know that it needed to be this long. I feel like it could have been a novella in between. Like it
Yeah.
can't be a companion because I think that it's like necessary to read. Like it's
Mhm.
not just like an offshoot story.
Mhm.
Needed information. But I think we got a lot of time on things we didn't necessarily need. And I think that they could have been shorter and still gotten the point across. Specifically,
Yeah.
like Nona's little gang of buddies
Yeah.
and her being a teacher's aide. Like, I
Yeah.
think we could have trimmed some of that fat.
Exactly. It's cute, but like on my reread just while I was cooking dinner, like I was listening to some of the parts where she's like with the gang and like I was laughing. Like Kevin's cute. He's 7 and he's like making erasers act out sex and it's funny. Um but like I think it's telling that what we've just been talking about, we've just said maybe she doesn't write the best first acts. And then here's a book that is essentially a
Mm,
first act.
right. Well,
So it's already
but
not
there's
like her
gold
strongest.
there.
Yeah, no, no, no. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it's
Yeah,
terrible. I'm just saying that like it's maybe not where her strengths lie. And
that's
then we get an
interesting.
entire book of it.
Yeah, maybe. Ugh. Yeah. Okay.
But I
Uh,
agree with you. Like fat could be trimmed.
yeah. I just don't think that I just don't think that it needed to be as long as it was. And like, don't get me wrong, like I was laughing out loud, blinking away tears,
Hmm.
fully, like, I think that Nona was actually adorable.
Oh yeah.
Like, picturing this, like, naive, but also aware child mind in the body of like 18, 19-year-old Harrow who's being like carried around like a young 7, 8 year old, by Pyrrha at times. It was
Hmm.
just too funny. Like it was hilarious,
Yep.
but not that much happened, and so much of what was going on was stuff that was outside of Nona's comprehension. And
Exactly.
this is one of my biggest pet peeves in books. I read another book that was like that this summer where there was like political stuff going on over here and the
Oh.
main character didn't care about it, and I was like, "No, I want that." And that is how I felt reading this book with
Okay.
like all of the Blood of Eden stuff.
Yep. I completely 100% agree with that. And I think that that's the biggest problem is that I mean, it kind of ties in, I think. I mean, Gideon's pretty clueless for a lot of Gideon the Ninth too, right? But
Yeah,
she's also kind of like figuring things out as she goes along, but also Harrow knows so much more and like
that's true.
and but it works in Gideon in a way that I think it doesn't work as well in Nona because you're right, Nona just doesn't seem to care, whereas Gideon's like actively trying to find stuff out.
Yeah,
And this was something that Spencer and I talked about as well is that Nona just seems like quite a passive main character and she doesn't really drive the like she doesn't do things that drive the plot or the story goals aren't necessarily her goals and that makes it feel kind of disconnected. Like there are people in this book who want things to happen. Nona
yeah,
doesn't really care. Nona just wants to have
no,
a birthday party and like
yeah,
hang
be
out with
part of
her
the gang.
friends. Yeah,
Yeah,
which I do really love how the gang treats Nona. Like you were talking about how cute she is and how and like it's clear that they think she is dumb as a bag of bricks, but like they
yeah,
love her anyway and it's
yeah.
cute.
No, and that was okay, but I think even more than in Gideon, in this one, it's like Cam and Pyrrha and Calamities, like over here, having conversations, or Crown, or which was an interesting, like,
Mhm.
and you're like, what's going on? What is it talking about? I don't have all the information to understand like these things, and you would get like snippets of like, ooh, that sounds important, or like, ooh, they must be talking about blank, and you just couldn't. There isn't enough there
Mhm.
to really fill you in, even though you know that there's stuff going on that is relevant and important. And it was so frustrating not to have all of the pieces.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Ooh, is that a good book to read? What would you rate it?
Huh. Okay. Again, like I'm really influenced because I think Harrow is a work of intense genius, and but like I'm also generally quite generous with nines and tens anyway. But and it's not that Nona was bad. It just wasn't quite as exciting of a follow-up as I was hoping. So maybe like a 7?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
if I
I
would
think I
I
would.
think sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
Well, I think if I would give Gideon a 9 and Harrow a 10, then I think Nona would be a 7.
Oh, that's quite a drop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel disappointed?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm glad
Because
it's
you
not
were
the last
very
book.
excited about that.
I know. What do
Mm,
you think?
yeah, I'm glad this is not the last book. I think I would do like high sevens, like seven
Okay.
five, not quite 7 8.
That's very specific.
I talked about this in my last video where I was like, I can't, like, my rating like needs to be a 100-point scale. Like, I need that extra decimal point on a ten
Yeah.
point scale.
That could work. Or like where I went to university had a 20-point scale, but it was like a bell curve kind of scale. So like 19,
Hmm.
20 were like really, really good, really, really high. Um,
Yeah,
and then like, you could get like 13 to 16, which was like, yeah, this was good. And then
yeah.
10 was like, eh.
Yeah, yeah. I think like a 7.8. No, no. What did I say? It wasn't quite 7.8, 7.5, 7.6.
Yeah. Okay.
But like, I had a fun time with it. But the whole time,
Yeah.
I just kept feeling like, what is this getting me? Which is not, that sounds mean a little bit. Like, I feel unfair for saying that. Like, a book needs to, like, be, like, providing me with something. But it just, like, it was like, you're adding in a whole extra book in a series.
Mhm.
It's got to be really relevant. And it was just, like, needed to be tightened up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I okay, you were gonna highlight that. Great.
Yeah. It's Harrow.
Yeah, it's Harrow.
Yeah.
Like Gideon, don't get me
Which
wrong,
I think
Gideon,
is unpopular of opinion.
really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I think people this is going to sound really awful. I think people need to get better reading comprehension skills because Harrow is just so I mean, don't get me wrong, it's tough. And like you won't get everything the first time. And okay, maybe that's a little much to expect people to read a book multiple times to love it. But like yeah, it's so
But I
good.
like books that have fabulous rereadability. Now, I'm a
Yeah.
rereader, so that makes sense
Mhm.
why that is important to me. But it's more and more, especially with when you keep like if you read a lot, you get to see very familiar storylines over and over again. And when something is like super different and like really confusing, and you like can't guess everything, you can't figure it all out because you're not being given enough information, which you absolutely are not being given enough
Mhm.
information about this world and everything to figure it out. I don't mind that, and I enjoy that. Like, I'm not someone who like
Yep.
needs to be able to figure it out. And then when
Exactly.
on the second read, when you can see the little hints and clues and along the way, you're like, oh my god, this is so great. Like, I love that.
I do too. I agree.
Oh, Hera was so much fun. And maybe you'll see more. Like, are you picking up more on your like so far reread of Nona?
I mean, I can see some kind of like clues for some of the things that happen later. Um,
Hmm.
I don't want to mention it here because it's non-spoiler section, but yeah, like yeah, there's more clues that lead into things that I maybe didn't care about as much because it was like Nona and the gang kind of thing rather than feeling like it was anything important. How about you? Have you you've like finished, right? But have you started a reread or anything?
No,
Okay. Okay.
I don't think that I have time for a reread just
Yeah,
yet.
fair. Yeah.
I might have to wait until whenever Electo comes out, which I'm
Okay.
assuming is next year.
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm going to reread all of them. Oh, part of me doesn't want to be, but part of me does want to reread them all again. That's a
I
lot of
took
Locked Tomb.
I took pretty extensive notes on this time in preparation for Nona, and I feel like none of them came to fruition because we didn't like get to any of the big questions that were raised in Gideon and Harrow.
What? I disagree.
Okay, like all the John stuff, yes,
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
for sure. But like I feel like there's a lot of more kind of relevant to the present narrative stuff that didn't really um yeah. So, I don't know. Oh, are you still there? Are you frozen or not? In the case that I'm not frozen, but Kristen is the one that's frozen. Wolf, we're going to have a spoiler section later, so we're trying to keep this section spoiler free. So just stay tuned, and then we will spoil everything because we both have opinions. You're back. You were
Was it
frozen for
just
a
me
while.
that cut out? Oh, okay.
I don't know. Maybe it was both of us. I was pretending like I was still fine.
Well, we'll find out in the replay.
Yeah. Um. Oh, we were talking about something, and then I got distracted. Oh, we were talking about rereading. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Anyway, I feel like I don't need to reread before Electo because I took very extensive notes and have like
Okay.
a lot of ideas for things that I think might clue in to things that we find out later.
I feel like I want to read Nona at least once more.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the only reason to reread Gideon or Harrow again, which I think I know quite well, would be just to pick up other things. So be like, oh, that hasn't been addressed yet, or like that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but I did do that recap, which I think was pretty good
Yeah. I
for
thought
like
so.
in terms of like rounding out of being like, you know what, I think this is like a good overarch of what is important. I also found someone else, I forget the channel, um, did like an hour long one. So I think it must be like very detailed,
Oh
step by
wow.
step
Okay.
of the first two books. So,
Wow. Okay.
um, do you have any other non spoiler thoughts before we jump in?
I don't think so. I want to get to the spoilers.
Okay. Let's do it.
Okay. So you mentioned one of the big spoiler things already, like hinted at. Do you want to tackle that first? The
The ending?
prince? No,
The
the
prince
prince.
thing.
Yeah.
Sure. Let's do it.
Okay. Like what
Kiriona?
what
Is that what it
y-
was?
yeah. Okay,
Okay.
Kiriona Gaia, which I understand because John Gaius, Kiriona Gaia,
Okay.
but I don't know where Kiriona comes from.
I actually, somebody in a review said it was like it must have been a different language word for Gideon or something. I think
Oh,
it stands for something. It means something. I forget. It was like a one-off comment on somebody's review,
okay.
and I didn't write it down, but it apparently is a specific term.
Okay.
Okay, what about that didn't you like?
Was it just me or did Kiriona feel wrong?
Yes.
Yeah, like totally like what is going on?
what happened in the months, in the interim months,
Yeah.
that made I didn't like that we didn't have what was going on inside her head.
Mhm.
And there was
So,
like
full disclosure for those of you who want spoilers and haven't read the book. Um Gideon dies in the end of the first book and is sort of the narrator of the second book. And now she's sort of back in the third book, but like
she's
as a different character almost.
that's not how I would she's herself. She's a revenant. So it's like her spirit has been attached to her dead body. So she's
Right.
her soul in her body, but she's dead.
Right. So something is missing, right? And that must be a part of her that
Oh,
Harrow
that's what you
has.
think that. Oh,
I mean, I don't
yes.
know, she just feels
Oh, yeah.
wrong.
No, Pyrrha said something about this because I forget how it came up, but Pyrrha said something about um, that Harrow took enough that she couldn't get like be fully there. That was a
Right.
random one-off comment that Pyrrha made. Yeah,
Okay.
zombie. Yeah, basically, with maybe not quite all of her parts there of her soul.
Mm. Right. Okay. That makes more sense.
And maybe that's the like why she felt like she acted a little bit like herself, but like a little bit not.
Yeah. I
Like a
guess
little
where,
bit bitter. It's tough
yeah,
because you're seeing
where
it through
Hera
Nona's
was
eyes,
concerned. True, true. Where
and
Hera
Nona
was
was not.
concerned, she seemed a little bit more herself. But like where Ianthe was concerned, where we last saw them, like Gideon had just like bitched. Pardon me, I don't know if I can swear on live stream. Anyway, Gideon had just like ripped Ianthe a new one, and then all of a sudden they're like BFFs. I was like, what is this?
I gasped out loud. I was walking on the street or like in like a tunnel under the Esto and listening to the audiobook and Nona's like, wait a second, they're wearing friendship bracelets and then she describes them doing like some sort of like secret handshake and I was like
Felt like such a betrayal.
it
But at
did.
one point,
But then I was curious of like what has been happening in the months in between that have allowed Ianthe and Gideon to be buddies. But then she kind of I couldn't understand everyone's motivations there because Nona was kind of in and out of it and like Nona was having some like dying, something's happening to her-ness going on
yeah.
and again, I was like out running errands, right? So like I'm not fully getting everything while I'm
Mhm.
doing that. But I didn't understand what Ianthe was doing there, and I didn't understand like Gideon was like, oh, like Gideon claimed that John sent her there to kill the
Yeah.
body of Alecto so that she could somehow be his cavalier.
Oh, I didn't pick up on. I wasn't quite sure of those motivations.
That was, Gideon was saying something about that, and Ianthe
Okay.
was like, "You fool! He's lying to you. He's in love with Alecto. He doesn't want you to kill her. Like something he's tricking you." But I also couldn't
Oh.
understand what Ianthe was doing there.
Yeah.
That scene was a little bit chaotic.
It was very chaotic. Do you want to hear, kind of relevant to that last scene, but do you want to hear the worst slash best fan theory that I saw on Twitter? Okay. So basically, Alecto is kind of like described as kind of Barbie esque, right?
Yeah, or
Uh
that
huh.
yeah,
Yeah.
that he like
Like,
he created her body with Barbie in mind.
yeah. And you know how the the planet Varun, the RB, the Revenant Beast thing, speaks to Hera, speaks to Nona through like Captain Deuteros, and there's the phrase like ah 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 that's used a couple times. Some people suggested it might be a reference to Aqua Barbie Girl. Do you know the song, right?
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
fully.
Yeah.
Um, okay, we're saying
Which
that was the Revenant. What was that thing called? Resurrection Beast. That was the
yeah,
Resurrection
there we go.
Beast speaking
Resurrection
through
Beast.
Captain Deuteros
Yeah, but
to
the
Nona.
important part is what the
That's not
Resurrection
important.
Beast. Okay, no, no, no. I'm saying for this stupid fan theory thing, um, is that it's a reference to Barbie Girl, the song.
I mean, maybe. Okay, but
It
here's the
sounds like a
when you're
Tamsin
doing
Muir thing to
audio
do.
only, it was tough to
Yeah, that's fair.
right. It could
Yeah.
be. There's some subtleties. Okay, what is Ianthe the saint of?
Awe. AWE.
Okay, that's what
As
I
in like,
thought, but I was not
yeah.
sure because it's like in Moira Quirk's accent, and I'm like,
Yeah.
she's saying ah, like I feel like that's kind of one thing that you like need to like visually see. I mean, that's a fun theory. There's interesting references like that, like with the all of the Blood of Eden like commander names and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I love
uh,
that Corona Beth becomes crown because Corona means crown in
yeah,
Latin. And there's so many
yeah,
Latin references in the house
yeah,
names, Latin and Greek.
yeah. I wonder if she changed. I wonder if she changed that because of Corona. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Because she took on like a Blood of Eden name. Crown her with many crowns, I think. Like we suffer and we suffer.
Oh. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's just funny. That's so weird.
Mhm.
Okay. I'm trying to think of other things that I like want to know, get your opinion on. Is Captain Deuter still alive at the end of this?
I think
Poor
so.
Judith.
I
I
know.
feel
Okay,
so
well,
bad
like,
for Judith.
I don't know. I never liked her. She can die for all I
I
care.
don't like Judith, but that
Okay.
little that like missing scene or that extra scene that was in the back that you sent me, like it,
Yeah.
that created some sympathy, some empathy for me with her.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
but I just feel bad that she's like being kept alive and obviously in so much
Yeah.
pain, and she's like a prisoner, and they like maybe want to use her blood to power some sort of space travel thing. I think that's what that means when they're talking about those.
I think so. Or that
I
they
don't know if
need
it's
her
beacons.
alive to be able to use like the interspace travel things.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's something like that. Yes, this series.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
quite the
All of the
star.
books. They're great.
um, okay, so we get this ending. Gideon's body shows up. She's
Uh-huh.
apparently been like accepted, but didn't it say something about that Blood of Eden had Gideon's body at first? So
Yes, but then
how did John
Cam
get it?
tells the story to Nona, and it's some about like basically how they got to that point, and says we lost something very precious. So basically, like
Uh,
Cam and Co must have been close enough because Harrow's kind of like, "What are you guys doing out here in deep space? Like you're close to the Mithraeum," and they must have been close enough to like grab Pyrrha with Harrow's body, but in somehow they lost Gideon's body. It's not really said how.
mm, and in the same time, how did it? Cause, but Gideon's soul was last. Like that's a question that we don't know.
Yeah.
Gideon's soul was last in Harrow's body
Mhm.
and with Pyrrha, and somehow
Yeah.
Pyrrha winds up with Harrow's body, but loses Gideon's soul,
Yeah.
and somehow John winds up with Gideon's body and
And
Gideon's soul.
Gideon's soul. Yeah.
With, I think, of note, Gideon has some extra wounds that were described.
The chest wound is from when
The chest
she
wound is when she
killed.
died, but
Yeah.
it's talked about like a hole in her neck.
Oh.
It had extra wounds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But they
Huh.
also kind of implied at some point that Blood of Eden was like doing some stuff to the body
Oh,
to like
maybe.
make sure that it was dead.
Oh, okay. That could be.
Oh, okay. Let me check my notes to see. We talked about whether or not it needed to be a whole book. We got lots of great world building.
Yeah,
We got answers.
some answers. Not the answers that I think I was wanting though, in some ways.
Okay, I wrote
But
down we
the
finally
John
found
stuff
out.
is great.
Yeah, I don't think we needed quite as much John stuff as we got. I think that that could have been trimmed.
Yeah.
I think you needed to like see the progression of things, yes, like over that time
Hmm.
span, but at the same time, it didn't actually answer like how he got magic. He just like spent a lot of
Yeah.
time with those dead bodies and suddenly some stuff started happening.
And of course he's narrating it as well. So we're going to get his version of events. But I thought it was so interesting with the names that were just like the letter and then the space. And I mean,
Oh, is that how it did it? Was it
yes,
just that
yes.
like C or A and M did this and P did?
So in the written version it's like a slash like you
Okay,
get in like older, like in Jane Austen sometimes you get a like they'll
I know what
talk
you mean.
about
Yeah,
like a Mr. C or something like that when they don't want
yeah,
to use the whole name for some reason.
yeah.
Wolf says maybe the author is making a new book. I don't know how to highlight the things. But
Just
yes,
that
the
paper.
author is making a new book. So this is the third book in a four-book series. There were only supposed to be three books originally, but kind of like what we were talking about earlier on in the stream, um, the first act of the fourth book ended up being so long that she turned it into Nona the Ninth, the third book. So there's another one coming that will answer more questions.
Hmm.
But sorry, back to John. Um, I
As
really
well as some
liked,
of the clear original lictors who were
yeah,
like original, like not from the houses.
yes, and like you can tell that some of the personalities are still there as well, like kind of Pyrrha or P being like the pet cop kind of thing.
Yeah,
It's very
I
Pyrrha.
wrote down M and A, so I'm guessing Mercy Morn and Augustine.
Yep,
I got G, which I assumed was Gideon,
yep,
and P for Pyrrha, who was
yep.
not a lictor but a cavalier.
Hmm.
C and N,
That's Cassiopeia and
that's what I
Nigella.
thought.
Yep.
Was Nigella a lictor or was
She was
Nigella
Cassiopeia's cavalier.
cavalier, right? Yeah, okay.
Yep.
And then A's little brother was mentioned.
Alfred.
Alfred was an A as well, okay.
Hmm.
And then those are the only ones I could remember. They did mention, like, obviously that Mercy Morn had that nun friend,
That's
but then the
Christabel.
nun. Well, okay, but I wasn't sure if it was Christabel because you never said, you never called her C,
But
and
they call her a
she
fanatic. It like Augustine and Mercy Morn when they're talking about
and
the
Harrow.
Christabel version, the version who became the Cavalier, they call her a
Yeah.
fanatic. And so I feel like that makes sense with the nun thing.
Okay. I wondered, but the only thing, but then obviously she like kills herself in order to show John, like in order to help John like tamp down on the soul thing. But then
Hmm.
like other people were also dying, so I was like, okay, everybody gets resurrected,
Yeah,
maybe.
I
Yes,
think so.
I
I
think
think
he
he
like
was like,
destroys the world, right? Like
yeah,
he destroyed the world in that moment.
he destroys the world. He
Yeah,
and I mean that's the whole,
consumes
yeah,
the soul of the earth, which is
exactly.
Electo. Ah! And he
Okay.
puts her in the body of Barbie.
Which is like just such a sort of patriarchal thing to do, isn't it? Like I'm gonna create this woman. I'm gonna create Eve basically, and she's gonna look like Barbie.
Did you note that when Nona sees the body, she describes like the proportions being a little bit funny?
No.
Oh, okay, maybe I just imagined that, but I felt like she described some of the proportions being off. which I was
Oh,
like, that's
that's
funny.
funny.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so that was an answer. We got like the what happened.
Yep.
We got that Electo was basically like the soul of the earth.
Mhm.
Um,
How soon did you figure that out?
in the moment when he said he's like, I just started because the whole time he's like talking to you. You were dying. We just wanted to save you, and we are talking blah 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 you. And I was like, I wasn't sure because then it also wasn't like the two dead people that he like first was having walking around. Like neither of their names were Electo or anything else like that. And so I was a little bit confused, but it wasn't until the moment when he was like, when things were going down and he was like, I just started shoving you in my mouth. And I was like, wait a second. And then it was like, he said something about soil. And I was like, oh,
Yep.
it's the earth.
I
Did
didn't
you pick
pick
on
up on
earlier?
it. No,
Oh,
I
okay.
did not pick up on it. Like, I think it wasn't even until talking about it with Spencer later and he made some comment and I was like, "Oh, that's
Um,
what happened."
yeah, okay.
Um,
I got it when he started like
okay.
shoveling like earth into his mouth. I was like, oh, interesting. And then it says something like, I put you in the body of, and then I was like, oh, and then it made sense, like all the things that he was saying, like what's more important, saving, like getting everyone off or saving you, and
Yeah.
obviously it's you. But what confuses me is at the very end of the very first section with John is that he addresses you as Harrow Hark.
Yeah.
It's like, what's that about?
I don't know.
That's
But
something
it
we don't have a. That's a new question.
but it kind of seems to be Harrow there listening to him in some way. So either he's
It
like
does.
equating the two or treating Harrow as like a new I don't know. It's
The other interesting there's something weird going on with Harrow and Electo that I imagine has something to do with either A, her obsession, or like B, the fact that she like was physically in the presence of Electo at
mhm.
that time she snuck in. But even what's that guy's name? Is it Crux? The really, really old guy that's like obsessed, it's Crux, yeah.
Mhm.
He there was a moment when he is speaking to Nona and she mentions something about like this like recognition in his eyes and he's like, oh, she's like, you don't understand, like I'm not Harrow. And he's like, no, you're not right now, but that's okay. Sometimes you've been this before. And you know how in Harrow she explains how I don't remember if it was in the flashback, like in the recreation, but she basically said that Crooks has been like covering for her insanity all along.
Yeah.
So I wonder if like part of some of those moments was actually like
Oh.
Nona, like because he seemed to recognize Nona. I thought at least in that moment.
Oh.
So I was
'Cause
like, so there's something weird going on with that, right? Of like there's some
mhm.
weird connection with Nona and Electo.
Well,
But it definitely I think is weird that he seems to be talking to Harrow's soul, who up until this point is like still missing.
mhm.
But then suddenly, I don't know. I had trouble following the end. That's why I need to physically see the last chapter in
Yeah.
writing.
I definitely need to reread the ending as well. I can send
Yeah,
you pictures if you want of just like the
I
last
was
chapter.
maybe gonna ask you
Yeah,
to do that.
definitely. Um, but also, that's really interesting that you bring that up because when I was rereading Harrow this time, I was trying to figure out how the insanity thing like plays in. Like, is it something that she makes up in the alternate in like the spirit bubble world because like to explain things, or is this something that she's
Uh,
actually remembering?
I thought that it was something that was like actually going on with Harrow because in the real time, like while she's with the Mithraeum or she's in the Mithraeum, she is still seeing the body. Like she's seeing and
That's
hearing the body
true.
sometimes. So I just
Yeah.
interpreted that as like, oh, we're like this has been going on for a while. And she
Okay.
like explained like a back. I guess I didn't. I interpreted that as being something that has always been going on with Harrow, or at least since. Like I thought
Mhm.
that that was a real thing. It wasn't just in the bubble, but it was like
Okay.
acknowledged in the bubble.
Okay. Cool.
Um. Okay, let me see. Okay, we have to talk about Camilla, who's like the sleeper best character of this series.
The absolute greatest. There is no one better than Camilla Hecht.
Did you feel this way before?
I always liked Camilla, but she really got to shine in this one.
Just like now, do you think we're being influenced by Nona's clear like hero worship of Camilla? That we're seeing Camilla through Nona's like revering eyes?
That might have something to do with it, but I think we also get to see how Camilla acts in certain situations and like what's going on with Palamedes and everything. And it's so heartbreaking. And Kristen, I'm so angry.
Yeah,
I
you're really
am
upset about Paul.
so Paul, of all names, he chose Paul.
I know.
I disliked for the other viewers. I disliked the name Paul in fantasy series ever since reading Dune, and I could not get past the fact that the
No, all
two
the
main
haters are
characters
gonna
were
comment now.
Jessica and Paul. Sorry. Anyway, Paul. So yes, no, it just the two greatest characters are now. It's like the worst thing that could happen because at least if they
It
had
felt
died,
muted.
it oh it didn't feel it was supposed to feel like a victory, and like rereading it I can see sort of where it's going, but like I don't see how it's fulfilling at all, certainly
Why
not
can't
as
he
a
just
reader.
like pick up anyone else's like? Why can't he just occupy someone else's body like he did
Yeah,
Babs for there for a while? Or
yeah.
Demirius.
Poor Furious. I love it when Coronabeth is like, yeah, that you can't even do his hair right.
Oh my god, that was a line that I
Yeah,
texted
so
you.
good. Oh,
Oh, they're so
poor
funny.
Babs.
Yeah, no, Camilla is just like Camilla and Palamedes in this book were just like perfection.
They really were.
All of their like little conversations to each other were just like devastatingly sad.
Yeah. Also, so here's a question for you. Because I'd never really gotten the impression that they were like romantic, but the conversation that Nona hears between them, like the recorded them passing, sort of going through Cam's body and recording
Yeah.
conversations to each other, like that is deeply romantic.
Uh,
But like in a non sexual kind of way, I guess. Like
yeah.
it's like true love rather than like
Yeah.
passion.
Yeah. I interpret it as like a friendship that cannot be
Okay.
like unparable. What's that word?
No,
Uncomparable, non-comparable,
yeah.
like you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like just like a true,
Mhm.
profound friendship, kind of a love.
Okay.
In the way, like I always, that's how I felt about the pool scene in Gideon, whereas you
Okay.
felt the pool scene was kind of intimate.
But like it's because the thing is that Muir does such interesting things with love in this book. And I really in these books. And I really think it's an exploration of love in a weird way, but kind of unconventional. And but also how love is can be toxic and can destroy and is not necessarily a pure and good thing. Like Gideon and
Mm.
Harrow, they don't love each other in a conventional way. And
No,
it's not like
they have a
they're
very unhealthy.
it's a very unhealthy, but like that seems to be Muir's kind of theme is that like love is kind of unhealthy. Like if
Yeah,
think about Ianthe and Coronabeth, like two characters who
yeah,
clearly love each other, but like wow, that's messed
it's
up.
messed up. Yeah,
And yes, it's a sibling love, but like that's
yeah,
still a kind of love.
yeah. You know what? That's
Like
so.
they're so
Yeah, no,
dependent.
I didn't think about that, but yeah, I mean, all of the relationships are so interesting. I think
Yeah.
Cam's and Palamedes is like the healthiest,
Yeah. Yeah.
seemingly.
Definitely.
Um, Yeah, that was tragic. Um,
And I'm just so disappointed. Like,
yeah.
how boring was Paul?
Well, that's what I said about like muted. It felt like,
Yeah.
and I liked that Nona was like, "Oh, it's not Cam, it's not Palamedes." I like she lost both of them. Like she was grieving
Yeah.
losing both of them because who's this Paul guy? You know, like it felt like Paul. The way Paul acted just felt like a muted down version of either of them. You know, like it just.
And is
We'll see.
neither.
Maybe Paul gets a lot of time, like page time in the next book. We'll see. Maybe we'll come to love Paul. I don't know, but it was sad. Like that's when I was tearing up. Was all of that.
That's when I cried because it felt like they both died. It felt like at a single blow we lost two of the very best characters in this series
Yeah,
in a cruel, cruel way. And it
yeah.
almost feels like we aren't supposed to grieve for them because like, oh, they've
They're still
become
together.
this. Yeah, exactly. They've
Is
become
the
this
idea
like
that they're like basically John now, like God? Like they managed to do what God did?
um no, because I think God's power comes from the fact that it's two souls in two bodies. But maybe not.
Hmm.
Maybe it also comes from the fact that John's second soul is the earth.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think
Because he
Paul
like
will
it
be
sounds like he ate
powerful.
the sun also.
Oh, maybe. Like,
It
it did
sounded
say
like that
something
was the
about
first
him.
thing he did. Or like
Okay.
destroying the sun or consuming it or stealing all of the energy from it, which would destroy the solar system.
Yeah, exactly. Because I also felt like he kept reaching out trying to get to the ships.
Yeah, that's what he
Um,
was doing. He was trying to stop that
yeah,
ship from,
yeah.
which explains that weird conversation between him and Augustine at the end of Harrow. When Augustine was like, just stop, man. Like, just stop searching. They blah, 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 blah. And John was like, the old you would have been so disappointed in you.
Hmm.
Do you remember?
Kind of, yeah. But I just assumed that Blood of Eden were descendants of that ship.
I think Blood of Eden is rebels from with I don't know, maybe. I'll put that down on my new questions.
Okay.
What happened to the ship of trillionaires? Because obviously that's what John is
Mhm.
looking for in that sense of like Augustine references him like expanding, 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 always searching and looking and whatever, like trying to consume or like take over all of the
Yeah, and the
places with
lictors are constantly destroying planets. Like they're destroying perfectly good planets that people live on, and it's not really clear why.
people live on.
Yeah, that's what all the settlements are about. So everyone's packed onto this planet where Nona and Co are, and
Mm-hmm.
there's like people from tons of different there's 17
Mm-hmm.
languages on this planet. People from all over that have been resettled here by the houses. And
Okay.
no one's happy, but also no one wants to be moved again. And now that's why they're stressing out because they
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be moved again.
Yeah.
But and what teacher is talking about, or the angel is talking about, is that she was on this planet that like, oh, then it turned out that the planet was actually dying. I think because of something the lictors had done. And then so they moved everyone off of her planet. And she says that wasn't even the first time she's been resettled. So this is
Yeah.
happening a lot.
Actually, that makes sense because there was something that was talked about in terms of like what the cohorts did, like what the cohort did in terms of like taking apart contract. And
Mhm.
I like didn't make sense to me, you know, because it's like not always explained
Yeah. Yeah.
in profuse detail about like what's happening with the world and the magic system. Okay, that's
Mhm.
interesting. So he's trying to, yeah.
Yep.
Um, Let me think, just because I don't want to keep us up too late. Um, I wrote down for my dislikes way too much of the school
Mhm.
and Nona's gang, like way too much.
Yep.
Cute, but we didn't need all of it. We didn't need
Mhm.
that much page time. Um, and I thought the shift at the end was a little bit clumsy. And the shift I'm referring to them is specifically them arriving at the ninth house and then having all that like, oh no, we're being taken over by these demons,
Yeah.
and Gideon slash Prince, I'm forgetting it, Kiriana, being like,
Kiriona, yeah.
ah, these guys, Dad promised they couldn't get onto Ninth House, and it's like you're like, what?
Mhm.
This? I felt like that was like a very clumsy transition into Electo the Ninth Book material,
Yeah.
like
Agreed.
setup for the next book. It just was
That's
like
true.
we have this crazy thing, and Camilla and Palamedes die, and like they find the people from the sixth house who like Blood of Eden has just been driving around in trucks for 6 months.
Yeah. The
Okay. Uh,
convoy.
um, but them then suddenly like, oh, we have to get to the locked tomb to like reunite Nona with the body and see what happens. Hopefully something good. Like,
Mhm.
and then just yeah, them discovering all of like these like demons taking over, and like the throwback to like what happened to Column. Like that was a throwback. Definitely an
Yeah.
unanswered question from the first book, but like certainly not one
Yeah.
I was expecting to start getting answers to.
So, but Harrow seems to be back in her body. But then there's also this like
Well, okay,
tower
but
thing in the river that's mentioned.
yes. The Harrow thing being back in her body, I felt like that was. You remember how? Okay, so at the end of Harrow, Harrow's soul like decides to leave the bubble in the river, and she like surfaces up through the river, and she winds up in the locked tomb, like, and she's like sees a sword, and she's like and a dirty
Mhm.
magazine somehow. So that's actually like when they opened up the locked tomb, it described a body being there, holding a tomb or like holding the sword and everything like that.
That's
Did it?
Electo's body.
Did it not describe two bodies,
I have to
or was
reread
it
it. I
one?
don't
Yeah,
remember.
I had trouble. I need to reread the ending. But my sense was that like Harrow was actually there, and
Mhm.
then somehow, yeah, they swapped. I don't know.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like swapsies.
Swapsies. And maybe
I
that's why
did
John was talking to Harrow. I don't know. But why was he saying
maybe.
you? But why was he saying you then?
I don't know. I don't
Oh, so
know.
weird.
At some point I'm also just like okay with not knowing. Sometimes at some point I'm
Yes,
just like, "You know what? All right. This is weird.
I
Hopefully
trust
it'll
that
be
it will.
explained."
Yeah, exactly. I trust that it'll be like pieced together how, like, even if it's like in like a single line or whatever. Like I trust that it'll
Mhm.
be there.
Yep.
Um, anything that we haven't chatted about that you feel like you need to like?
The Paul thing was the big one that I just
Yeah,
like have opinions
you're
on.
so upset about the Paul
Um,
thing.
I'm
Yeah.
so upset.
Do we think
Um,
what kind of end game do you want for the Harrow Gideon situation?
I
Like,
guess I
is this
want
what we
them.
want for Gideon and Harrow? Do we want Gideon to always be like a zombie revenant in her dead body? We hope. I don't want Gideon's
No,
die. I don't want Gideon's soul to disappear.
I don't want them to do a soul meld like Camilla and Pam for sure. Like I'll be really mad if that's endgame.
Okay,
Um, I
interesting.
I think it's interesting that both their souls and both their bodies are still in play. And I don't think that they'll do like a swap, but maybe that would be like the most powerful. I think Harrow's going to rival God, is what I think. I think she is going to become the new
Ooh,
God.
that's interesting.
Because, I
That's a
mean, you
fun
need to get
take.
rid of God.
Yeah,
But you also don't want, like, it would feel kind of unsatisfactory if everybody in the nine houses who are not who some of them are very complicit in what's happening to the other planets, but some of them are just living their lives. And I think
yeah.
it would be unsatisfying if everyone were punished. And so presumably there has to be someone to replace God.
Interesting.
What do you want to happen?
I don't know. I just don't want to lose Gideon or Harrow.
I know. I
I want some
know.
sort of real Gideon Harrow reunion.
Mhm.
I don't see them together. Like, I'm not shipping Gideon and Harrow by any means.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be that simple. I think it'll
No.
be, I mean, their relationship is much more complex than that. Um,
Yeah.
it was funny actually at one point when Nona says she doesn't like redheads, and everyone was like,
Oh my
"That's
God.
very interesting."
I thought that was so funny.
Let me write that down.
Not only that she like didn't like them, I think too when she like finds out that one of her bodies might have been a redhead, she was like devastated. I thought that
Yeah,
was really funny. Like I was
yeah.
offended, but I thought that was really funny.
I also loved the throwaway line when she's asking people what they find sexy, and then she asks Camilla what Palamides finds sexy, and she says high test scores, and then Palamides
Yes,
says sexy nurse outfits.
I thought that was so. And Nona was like proving that Cam did lie, or like can
Yep.
lie, or something. And we're like, okay, we all know, but Palamedes was a
Uh,
liar there, not one.
uh,
I had fun. I had
I
fun
did.
reading this book,
Yeah.
but it wasn't completely necessary.
It wasn't as fun as Gideon. Gideon to me was like so much fun. Like I just thought that there was a lot more kind of banter, or like the banter was kind of different. Um I love Palamides and Camilla. I just
Yeah. I like Gideon's point of view
mm,
more than Nona's. Like, I thought that is Gideon's point of view is some of the most fun that I have in reading
mhm.
books these days. And I include a lot of the second person perspective of Harrow as that,
Yep. Yep.
especially at the end, obviously. Um,
Mhm.
and Nona was just like cuter. Like I had a cute, but I think I found like the plot in no, I guess the plot in Gideon and Nona were both a little bit. I feel like my reread of Gideon this summer, I feel like ruined it for me, just because I don't think I
That's
was like
so
100%
funny.
in the right
Okay.
mood for it. Maybe
Mm. 'Cause to me
I don't
it's
know.
like kind of a murder mystery kind of thing, right? It's like
Yeah,
because
but
I
I
was
don't like.
so shocked in the first time I read it when they killed the
I
fifth
was
house.
shocked,
I'd just
but that
been
was the
like,
first time I loved that. But the second time I was like,
true.
ooh, she's. I knew the ending, you know.
Yeah.
And usually that I don't mind that, but
Mm.
maybe I don't reread murder
Okay.
mysteries often,
Oh,
so
okay. Do you
maybe that's the
think
difference.
maybe? Do you think Electo is actually going to be the narrator of the last one?
Okay, maybe.
Do
And
you
that would
think it's
I saw someone say I really hope Electo is the ninth is not written in the format of that last section, the epilogue, I guess, is when it was
Yep.
like that weird.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be I mean, the second person I thought was gonna be tough, and it wasn't actually that tough. But like I think the
Agreed.
old-fashioned language of Electo would be quite tough to get through.
Yeah,
I mean, if it's
yeah,
like small sections, I can deal with that,
same.
but not the whole book.
I almost feel like Alecto, for this story to be complete and for me to feel fully satisfied, I don't think I could live with not having another Gideon POV.
Yeah.
Same with Harrow.
Yeah.
I don't want to not have Harrow as a POV ever again.
I agree. I completely
Nona
agree.
was cute, but I could have her as like a side. I could have Nona as a character. I mean, like Nona's gone, right? Like she's
I'm good with Nona. Yeah. No,
yeah.
Nona's fine. She did her thing. She was cute while she lasted.
I would be okay if Nona was a side character, but like obviously, Electo has like consolidated their
Yeah.
soul or whatever, and
Yeah.
Nona is gone.
Yeah.
Um, but if Gideon and Harrow don't have POVs in that book, I'm gonna be really sad.
I think I really will be too. Because,
Especially
it's
because
the
Gideon
emotional
was so
connection.
weird at the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't like that I didn't know what Gideon was up to and where
Yep.
she was at. And like I'm
Yep.
even upset that we missed all of that time with Gideon.
Yeah, me
We're
too.
gonna have to have some sort of like emotional reconciling of like what that was like, you know?
Yeah. I did like um the Gideon slash Curiona bit of being like, get in line now, dumb bitch, or whatever it was she said. That was good. That was funny.
I have to
And
yeah,
that was like the
I need
first
to
time it
reread that
felt like
last
the real
chapter in
Gideon.
the epilogue. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a little bit. There was a couple things she said specifically
Yeah.
like about Harrow. Like she was like, I don't care where that bitch is, but blah blah blah. You know, you're like, yeah, you
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
I thought it was so interesting that Nona and Gideon were like pretty antagonistic towards one another. Like
Mhm.
Nona was like, I don't like you at all, and Gideon was like, get away from me. Like she was like angry that somebody else was occupying Harrow's body.
Yep. Yep. And I mean, I don't blame her.
Yeah.
It would be weird to see the body of this person that you have this complicated relationship, whatever it is, with, and then be like, oh no, that's somebody different in there. Be like, who are you inhabiting the body of this person I know?
I saw somebody who interpreted the kiss as Gideon's first kiss. And could you imagine waking up to your first kiss, seeing this person that you have this really confusing, like, clearly you're really, really into, but also you really, really hate, whatever, and then realizing that it's not even that person? I don't know.
Wow. That's a good take. That's a good take. Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
I agree with you that like I think it would be disappointing if it's all Electo and we don't get Gideon and Harrow again.
Yeah.
Even Harrow I could live without as long as we get Gideon again.
Yeah. What would you change? What would you do differently?
The only thing I would change is what happened with Paul. Like, get rid of Paul.
Yeah.
I would rather have them both die outright than have Paul.
I think I like this a little bit better than having them
I
both die
know.
outright, but I'm very devastated to not have Camilla and Palamedes.
Because
Like
the thing is,
this
if they
book,
both
but this book just
die,
like sold me on those characters, and like I liked them in the
yeah,
first book, but man, was this great for them.
it was great for us. It wasn't so great for them.
Yeah, no, but it
And
was
like,
like
yeah,
it was devastating for them. But I meant like
yeah,
great in terms of like, oh, it's done so well.
yes, it was. And I mean, they do kind of make hints about things, but I just didn't want to see them. But I
Well,
think that
yeah.
if
What
they
was the
both
alternative,
died,
right?
then I could have mourned them properly. But they're not really dead, and so it's a different. It feels like cheating.
Right.
Ah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
Paul.
fair.
What would you change?
I would definitely have less school scenes
Hmm.
and less of the gang. Like I think if that was the case, and I think like I just wish that there was a way to tune me in a little bit more to what was actually happening with Blood of Eden. Like I wish that I just had more of a leg to stand on when I was hearing those conversations
Hmm.
between, you know, when we had like those like meetings with Commander, we suffer whatever, um, and with Crown, and like just like there were so many conversations that Nona was witness to that we didn't have all the information for. And I
Yep.
just wish I had like I didn't need to understand all of it, but I wish that I had a little bit more foundation
Hmm.
to feel a little bit more solid in those conversations.
Yeah. Agreed. One thing I thought was interesting about the gang. Have you seen an explanation that was like that so Nona understands every language, right? So when she sees like Born in the Morning and Beautiful Ruby, that's like the translation of their names in the original language.
Oh,
Because there's one point where she's
that's
talking about
really
Born in the
cute.
Morning. Yeah. But there's one point when she mentions Born in the Morning to Hot Sauce. Hot Sauce's name is just Hot Sauce. But
Yeah.
so she says Born in the Morning, blah blah blah. And Hot Sauce says, "You mean Born in the Morning?" And Nona's like, "Yeah, that's what I said."
Yes, I didn't understand that, but that makes so much sense.
And then Kevin is
Oh,
just
that's
Kevin.
so cute. Is honesty just honesty?
No, it must be a different it must be a different language where the name means honesty.
Honesty.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
that's
cute.
so cute.
Mhm.
Ugh. This book was like, there were things about this that were so precious.
Yeah,
Ugh. And I just, yeah. Okay.
I agree. And that's the thing is like, yes, I was disappointed, but like it's not like I hated it or anything. I still really enjoyed a lot of it. I was just a little bit bored in the beginning, and I
I think,
didn't like some choices in the end.
yeah. I think in a perfect world, this would have been a little bit shorter and
Mhm.
Electo would have come out very soon after.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true.
Because it doesn't feel like we progressed very far.
Yes. That is a really good way of phrasing it. And that's the thing is I just sort of feel like I didn't get that many answers.
Oh, something funny just happened.
Okay. Mm.
Say something?
Yeah, are you still there? Oh no.
It's just doing robot voice. I'm sure you sound normal to everyone
Okay.
else watching the.
Hopefully. Is it still robot voice for you? Do you need me to speak? Is it
No,
better?
it's still robot voice.
No. Is it your headphones or the internet? Just think of me
Oh, there we go.
as Our Lady of the Passion.
Oh my gosh. Oh, have you had that scene yet? The first time Our Lady of the Passion is in the
Yeah.
audiobook? Oh, I
Yep.
wanted to text you at that time, and I think but I was biking. I was
Oh,
biking home from work listening to that, just like laughing out loud because I almost said like you have to just go find this chapter in the audiobook. I think this is before you told me you were trying to reread it on audio. I was like, you have to hear how my work is doing this scene. Oh
oh,
my god. I
oh.
kind of wish it was really disappointing when they actually like had the physical like appearance of Hash described and how like Nona
Yeah.
was like thought she was so cool because in my head I was picturing like an old lady nun.
Oh, that sounds way cooler. Oh man. I
Oh
was I was I thought it was a little on the nose that she was like the what niece or something of Commander
yeah,
Wake. I was
yeah,
like,
definitely.
oh. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't
But
necessary.
Pyrrha or no, it's Corona at one point when she's mad because when Pash says she's just boobs and hair and Corona gets really mad and it's like it's
Yeah.
nepotism at its finest.
Oh, she does say that.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Moira Quirk reading for Corona Beth and Ianthe is maybe one of my favorite things.
So good. So good. Okay, so like, but I have to say that one of my favorite voices in the whole series is Babs. Like every single time she
You're
does
never
the
gonna get it
Babs
again.
voice. Oh, it's so sad. I was kind of glad that Babs had a little bit of a comeback, but I would have loved to get the voice.
Yeah. No, she did do a really good job with his voice. It was really
I
fun.
was I have to say I
I
was
wish I
really
would try to do it,
confused.
but I don't think I could do
No,
it.
no. um I was really confused when it's like clearly Ianthe. And then like Ianthe's described and it's like
Yes,
brown
I was just gonna
hair
say I
and
was really confused when they
I
first
was
started
like,
describing that.
what? Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
even when Krona was talking to Ianthe, and she was like, "Oh, Babs, what have you done, or what's happened to you?" And Ianthe's like, "It's me, you idiot!" Like whatever. And then it took me a solid minute. I was like, "What?" And I was like, "Oh, she's like wearing Babs's body."
Yeah. I love how like it's just such a weird relationship. But like how Corona is so like protective of Babs in a way and yet so dismissive at the same time. Love it. I love it.
Yeah, so good.
Hmm. Trying to think if there's like any more final things to say.
No, I was just gonna look up when Electo is slated to come out.
I think it's a year. I think it's
The
like
full
September,
year. Is it
October
next
next year.
September?
Yeah.
Oh,
But I
yeah.
mean, but
Also,
it's
it's on
been
Good
2 years since
2023.
Harrow. So at least we don't have to wait another 2 years.
Sorry,
I said it was 2 years since Harrow. So we don't have to wait another 2 years at least.
it's been 2 years since Harrow came
Yeah, wasn't
out.
it?
Whoa.
It was just that we read Gideon a little bit later. And so we read Gideon and then pretty soon Harrow came out. But I'm pretty
Right.
maybe
Yeah,
I'm
that's right. I was
wrong.
reading. No, no, you're right because I was reading Gideon for the first time around the time you were reading Harrow,
Okay.
and I waited like a whole year. Okay, yeah, you're right. No, and it's been 2 years. So then why isn't Electro coming out in like 3 to 6 months?
Because she needs to write the book. And okay, think about it this way. Would you rather have a rushed book that is unsatisfactory or would you rather have a really good book and wait a little bit longer for it? Cuz I would rather wait and get
No,
the good
I
book.
agree. I agree. I think that in a perfect world,
Yeah.
this was tighter, and it was like a little snippet to sink
Yeah.
your teeth back into the world after so long and to get you really
Yeah.
excited for Electo. You know,
Yeah.
I feel like that would have been a more fun rollout.
Mm. Have you read the short story with Camilla and Calamities?
No.
Okay. Don't get too excited. It's before they go to Canaan House.
Yeah. I
But it's
remember you
kind of
told me
like a
that you
fun
were
little
like,
thing.
it didn't add anything to the story, just
No.
like relationship building.
Yeah. I think the Judith Duderos short story added a lot more. That kind of fills in some of the gaps almost.
Yeah.
Um, not a whole lot, but it fills in a little bit of the gaps between Gideon and Harrow.
Yeah. And I think like how they came to be with Blood of Eden or like how Corona
Yeah.
was turned. I don't
Hmm.
100% get how Pam was turned.
It was that I think he was so horrified by the whole Lictor thing, and that really made him rethink God and the houses. And he just wanted to get his family safe.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hmm. That
That
was my
makes
impression.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to say it was disappointing, but I don't think. And that being said, I wasn't sure what to expect out of this because I was very nervous by like the cover art and the synopsis. It was like, whoa, this is a totally different vibe. And I mean,
Yep.
Harrow and Gideon are extremely different books, and Nona is a mixed. Like they're each very different,
Hmm.
but I feel like Gideon and Harrow were a little bit closer in tone to what this was.
I think yeah, maybe closer, maybe not tone even is right, but like almost in theme, in purpose, they were a little bit closer.
Maybe.
I'm not
I
sure.
mean, this
I
book
mean,
was
they are very different books, Gideon and Harrow.
Yeah,
And I guess I also expect Electo to be very different, but I kind of hope it's like Harrow different rather than Nona different.
same. But not so different that it's like the epilogue
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
its entirety.
Yes. Very, very much so. Yeah.
Please.
Please.
Okay, one final question. I don't know if you will remember this moment, but it
Hmm.
was a thing where it's like the audio, and I didn't get to see what it would look like. Is when they're talking about Corona is walking Nona to school after the meeting.
Hmm.
And she's like, Nona says something about, like, oh, well, you're not into that type of person, sort of thing. And Corona's like, oh, who am I into, you know? And she, like, lists
Hmm.
off, she's like, oh, you find Pyrrha attractive, but that confuses you, and you like to flirt with We Suffer, but you're not actually into them, and you want Camilla to love you, but not like love, like not like sexy love or something like that, like more like
Hmm.
you just like I want like a big hug from her, like you want a big hug from her, but really you're actually in love with, and then it cut off.
The captain.
Pardon? The
The
captain.
captain. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
Judith.
Did it
Yeah.
say like? Did it say like a letter or something that it looked like?
It must have because I knew instantly that it was the captain. But also
Okay.
I might have just gotten that from context clues because in I had also recently read it from the Judith
Yeah.
Deuteros short story, and she's also very confused about Corona and
Yeah.
like how she feels, and also confused about like Marta being dead and everything like that. But like it's very obvious to me that Corona is like super into the captain. And there's also like one part where Ianthe kind of says like that Corona only wants what she can't have. Like she only wants people that don't love her back.
The only reason I thought Captain was because of the short story, the excerpt, like the extra scene sort of thing,
Yeah.
where it turns out that Deuteros was in love with Corona.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I don't know if I would have guessed that. There
Okay.
really was
I
no
thought
other
I thought it was really
option.
obvious from seeing
Okay.
how the two of them were acting because Corona's so protective and like there's one point where she like holds her hand and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'll take a picture of the text though and I'll send it to you because for me it was unambiguous, but now I'm kind of like doubting myself.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, I was just curious. Like that's what I thought, but I didn't know if there was like a letter there that because it was just like,
Hmm.
are you really in love with? I think it started to say something, but then Kron was like, stop, like that's enough, sort of thing. Like,
Yeah.
so there was no,
I think it either says like in love with thee or in love with the sea, but I'll take a picture.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, it's kind of late. We should get
Yeah,
going.
we should. But thank you. It was really, really fun to talk about. I'm glad that we saved it all up for this.
Yeah, yeah, same. I don't think I'll do like a cohesive review, like a put together, but maybe we'll have to wait for next year, and I'll do a locked tomb. Where are we at? Recap free.
Yep. And hopefully
I
I'll
should do that.
be together enough to contribute to that one too.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining in live, who was in and out during the live show, and for watching on the replay as well. If you have any questions, you're welcome to, or comments or thoughts, like have you read Nona yet? Are you going to read Nona? If you have, what did you think? Do you agree, disagree? Were you disappointed? Did you love it? Just let us
How do
know
you
in the
feel about
comments.
Paul?
How do you feel about Paul? How do you feel about Paul? What do you want to happen with the Gideon Harrow stuff at the end of all of this? Put it down in the comments, and Taylor and I will keep an eye on there and keep answering or touching back in with you guys in the comment section. Well, anyway, thanks everyone for tonight, and thank you, Taylor, for joining in. It was really nice to chat.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
Night, everyone.
Bye.